Welcome to the channel Bong Toi Trong Dem. Before I begin, let me remind you, the entire story you are about to hear is fictional. But what I felt that night, the chill running down my spine, the metallic stench lingering in the air, and a fear I could not name, felt so real to me that it still haunts me to this day. I am the one who lived through that night shift, and this is the first part. I took the night security job because I had no other choice. Nearly 2 months unemployed in Kainan, rent piling up into a number that kept me awake night after night. The call came close to 11 p.m. A man's voice, raspy, blunt, asked only one thing. Did I have the guts to stand guard alone from midnight until morning? I nodded even as my heart raced, because I knew hesitation was not an option. Bin Min Supermarket sat on the edge of an old commercial complex, next to a vacant lot facing the sea. It was quiet even during the day. At night, it felt almost abandoned. I parked my motorbike in front of the entrance exactly at midnight. The sea wind slammed into my face, carrying a sharp salty smell mixed with damp cold. The Bin Min sign hung crooked, paint peeling, its neon lights flickering as if struggling to breathe. The sliding glass door screeched as it opened. Inside was glaringly bright, unnaturally clean. Fluorescent lights stretched across the ceiling, not a single one flickering. The air was cold, filled with the scent of plastic, cardboard, and that faint, familiar raw smell common to food supermarkets. A speaker mounted in the corner played an instrumental bolero track, old and looping, slow and steady, almost like a lullaby. A woman hurried out from the back. She looked to be in her 30s, wearing a staff jacket, her face pale with beads of sweat on her forehead. She stared at me for a few seconds, her eyes tense in a way that made my stomach tighten. "You're Min, right?" Her voice trembled slightly, breath coming fast. I nodded. Before I could say anything, she bent down to zip up her jacket, her hands shaking. Mr. Kwong left a paper on the cashier counter. Read it carefully, "Be careful." With that, she slipped past me and left quickly, almost running. The glass door closed behind her. The sound of a motorbike engine roared, then faded into the darkness of the coastal road. I stood there for a moment, an uneasy feeling creeping in, as if I had just been abandoned in a place I was never meant to stay. Cashier counter number 1 was right by the entrance. On its surface lay a piece of paper folded into quarters, placed neatly as if it had been waiting for me for a very long time. I opened it, handwritten, bold strokes, slightly slanted. "Dear Min, welcome to the Bin Min family. For your night shift to go smoothly, you must strictly follow the rules below. We hope you return home safely every morning." Below it was a signature, Kwong. I let out a small laugh, telling myself it was just a prank to scare new hires. But as I read the lines that followed, that smile slowly disappeared. "Every 30 minutes, you must patrol the entire store once. Do not enter aisle 7. If you hear someone calling from the freezer, ignore it. If the music stops, immediately go to the security room. No matter what happens, you must not abandon your shift." The thin sheet of paper felt unbearably heavy in my hand. I looked toward the end of the aisles, where the rows of shelves stretched on endlessly. Aisle 7 was tucked away in a corner, its lights noticeably dimmer than the rest. A draft slipped through from somewhere, carrying a pungent fish sauce stench that made my stomach twist. The security room was at the back, small and enclosed. Just enough space for a desk, a plastic chair, and an old camera monitor. I sat down, placed the paper in front of me, and fixed my eyes on the surveillance screens. Everything looked normal, too normal. Empty aisles, neatly arranged shelves, not a single person in sight. The bolero music continued to play, steady and repetitive, like a fake heartbeat I clung to for comfort. I glanced at my watch. 12:30 a.m. time to do the patrol. I stood up and stepped out of the security room. The sound of my shoes echoed sharply against the tiled floor, unnaturally loud in the silence. As I passed the dry food section, the smell of fermented shrimp paste suddenly grew stronger, thick and suffocating. Without thinking, I turned my head toward aisle 7, my heart pounding. That was when I heard it, a very faint sound, like someone breathing right next to my ear. "Help me?" The voice was thin and drawn out, as if drifting from deep within the dark shelves. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I remembered the words on the paper. "Don't look, don't respond." I lowered my head and walked faster, pretending I hadn't heard anything. But after just a few steps, the voice came again, clearer, closer, laced with a soft sob that sent a chill through me. I had the terrifying feeling that if I turned around, whatever it was would be standing right behind me. I almost ran back to the security room, slammed the door shut, and locked it. My hands shook violently as I dropped into the chair. On the camera screen, aisle 7 was still empty. Completely empty, but the sound lingered in my head, as if it hadn't come from the supermarket at all, but from somewhere deep inside me. The bolero music kept playing, yet I began to notice that every time it looped, the melody seemed slightly slower, as if the night itself were being stretched endlessly. And I had a very clear, sinking feeling that this night shift would not end with something as simple as waiting for daylight. Out there, at the far end of the shelves, something was patiently waiting for me to break the rules. I'll continue from the moment the security room door locked behind me. I sat still for a long time, my back pressed against the icy plastic chair. Sweat soaked through my shirt even though the air conditioner was running. My ears were still ringing with that voice, a voice that wasn't quite an adult's, but not a child's either, warped as if it had passed through an old speaker submerged in water. My eyes were glued to the camera monitor. Black and white frames showed every corner of the supermarket. Aisle 7 sat in the lower right corner. The image there was blurrier than the rest, as if the lens was always coated with a thin layer of fog. I swallowed hard, telling myself that just looking was fine, as long as I didn't step inside. At exactly 1 a.m., the camera near the shopping carts trembled slightly. I squinted. One old cart, its handle worn and peeling, stood crooked, out of line. I was certain it had been neatly placed with the others before. I remembered the fourth rule. If a cart is out of place, push it back immediately. I stood up very slowly. Every step out of the security room felt as heavy as if my feet were weighted with lead. The silence outside was so complete I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. The bolero music was still playing, but it sounded quieter now. Farther away, the cart sat alone in the middle of the aisle, as if someone had deliberately left it there for me. I grabbed the handle, cold, unnaturally cold, like metal left outdoors all night. I pushed it about half a meter when the wheels suddenly jammed. Then I heard another set of wheels rolling behind me. Very slowly, very evenly. I froze, a wave of cold running up my spine. Afraid to turn around, I flicked my eyes toward the nearest camera. On the small screen mounted in the corner of the ceiling, I could clearly see there was no one behind me. And yet another cart was moving on its own, inch by inch, drawing closer. I'm sorry. The words slipped out in a whisper. I didn't even know who I was apologizing to. I shoved the cart in front of me hard. The wheels suddenly spun freely again, sliding back into place. I ran for the security room without looking back. When the door slammed shut, I collapsed onto the floor, my heart racing wildly, ears buzzing. The camera monitor showed a scene that made my blood run cold. All the carts were neatly lined up, as if nothing had ever happened. Sometime after 2 a.m., a foul smell began spreading through the supermarket. Not the usual smell of fish, but a sickly, sweet stench, sharp and heavy, like raw meat left out too long. I covered my nose and stood up to check, following the rules exactly. The fresh meat section was near the end of the aisle. The lights there were brighter than everywhere else. Harsh white beams pouring onto the tiled floor. And right in the middle of the aisle was a dark red puddle, spreading outward, reflecting the lights with a wet shimmer. I stopped a few steps away, my heart pounding. The fifth rule flashed clearly in my mind. Do not step in it. Do not touch it with your hands. Clean it up. I went back to the storage room, grabbed a mop and a bucket of water. When I returned, the puddle was larger, as if more liquid had seeped in from somewhere. The stench hit me head on, making my stomach churn. I bent down to mop, keeping my distance. As I pulled the mop toward myself, I suddenly noticed the puddle wasn't just red. Inside it were long black streaks, like fingerprints dragged across the tiles. At that moment, a sound came from the nearby freezer. Tap, tap, tap? Like someone knocking from the inside. Please, open it? The voice was choked and pleading. Very close, terrifyingly real, followed by heavier pounding. My hands went stiff. My whole body trembled uncontrollably. I clenched my teeth, shut my eyes, and kept mopping like a machine. I didn't dare look at the freezer, but I could feel it. Something was pressed up against the glass from the inside. The knocking stopped abruptly. The silence was so complete I could hear water dripping from the ceiling onto the tiles. When I finished mopping and straightened up, something hit my eyes instantly. On the freezer glass, there was a handprint. Long and twisted, the fingers unnaturally stretched, nothing like a human hand. The thin layer of frost on the glass made it look as though the print was slowly sinking inward. I stepped back, then another step, until my back hit a shelf. I turned and ran for the security room, not caring whether I had completed the patrol or not. When I shut the door, the bolero music suddenly cut off. No music. Only the faint howl of sea wind outside the supermarket's glass doors, and another sound, like fabric dragging across the tiled floor. I sat frozen in the darkness, arms wrapped tightly around my knees. I knew exactly what the next rule was, and I knew just as clearly that whatever was moving out there was no longer a shopping cart. Because through the narrow gap beneath the security room door, I saw a pale white shape glide past slowly, leaving behind a long trail of dark red liquid across the ice-cold tiles. After the bolero music stopped completely, I sat motionless inside the security room. The darkness wasn't total, just enough to see the faint blue glow of the camera monitors. The air conditioner was still running, yet I was freezing so badly my teeth chattered uncontrollably. On the screen, the area outside the security room was empty. No white figure, no red trail, as if everything I had just witnessed had been nothing more than a fear-induced hallucination. Then, camera 3 flickered. Static filled the screen for a brief second. When the image returned, it showed aisle 7. I held my breath. The aisle was far darker than before. The fluorescent light above flickered sluggishly, casting a sickly yellow glow over shelves stacked with jars of fermented sauces and dried spices. It felt as though the stench of shrimp paste seeped straight through the screen, drying out my throat. And in the middle of the aisle, something was sitting there. It had no head. Its thin torso was curled in on itself like a child hugging its knees. Two twisted arms pressed against the tiles. Joints bent backward in a way that was painfully wrong. From where a neck should have been, a dark liquid dripped down, spreading across the floor. I raised a hand to cover my mouth, barely stopping myself from screaming. The camera began to zoom in, slowly, deliberately, as if someone else had taken control. As the image sharpened, I realized the body was trembling, as if it were crying. No sound, just rhythmic spasms. Then suddenly, it lifted its upper body. There was no head, but I knew, absolutely knew, it was staring straight into the camera. Don't come here," I whispered, my throat locked tight. At that exact moment, the camera screen went black. At the same time, I heard a dragging sound clearly outside the security room. Not footsteps, the sound of flesh scraping against tile, wet and heavy. I remembered the rule about the woman in the white dress. Run into the security room. Lock the door. Don't look. Don't ask. Don't call out. But I was already inside the security room. The dragging stopped right in front of the door. I held my breath, pressing my back against the wall. The familiar stench seeped through the crack beneath the door, so strong it made my eyes burn. "Open the door, Min." The voice was soft and even. No pleading, no screaming, like someone calmly calling out to an old acquaintance. My heart slammed against my ribs. I had never told anyone my name during this shift. "Ma'am, do you need something?" My voice shook violently. The moment the words left my mouth, regret numbed my entire body. Silence lingered for a few seconds. Then I heard a faint laugh, like fingernails scraping against glass. "You broke the rules?" The security room door trembled slightly, as if someone had leaned their forehead against it. Through the gap, I saw the hem of a white dress dragging across the floor. The fabric was soaked, dripping red drops onto the tiles. I squeezed my eyes shut. A sharp crack sounded close by, like a neck being snapped. When I opened my eyes, the camera feed was back. On the screen, the woman in the white dress stood directly in front of the security room. Her long hair covered her face completely. In her hands was an old plastic basket filled with raw pork. Blood streaming through the gaps and dripping steadily onto the floor. Then the camera angle shifted. I saw her face. Her eyes were completely white. No pupils at all, stretched open to an impossible width. Her head was twisted backward at an angle no human neck could survive. Her mouth pulled into a distorted, broken smile. She slowly crawled up the wall, her body pressed flat against the tiles, moving in jerky motions like a giant spider. "Look at me, just for a moment," I screamed silently, turning my face into the corner of the room and covering my ears. I don't know how long I stayed like that. I only know that when I finally dared to open my eyes, the bolero music was playing again. The melody was the same as before, but this time, I could clearly hear whispers woven into it. Dawn came just before 6. The day staff arrived, laughter, voices, the sound of iced milk coffee being set on the counter. When the security room door opened, I bolted out like a madman and sped away on my motorbike. I didn't look back. The morning sea breeze was cool. The early sunlight hitting my face so gently it almost made me cry with relief. I turned on the radio to drown out the sound of my pounding heart. And right then, the familiar bolero song began to play. No static, no distortion, clear, slow, looping, exactly the same as in Bin Min supermarket. I turned off the radio. The music kept playing. That was when a chilling realization hit me as I caught my reflection in the glass ahead. In the rearview mirror, behind me, there wasn't just one person sitting there. After that night, I never returned to Bin Min supermarket. I quit the job that very morning, turned off my phone, pulled the blanket over my head, and slept in a daze for nearly 2 days. I told myself it was all just stress. Exhaustion. Those ridiculous rules messing with my mind and making me imagine things that weren't real. But the problem was, I could no longer sleep in silence. On the first night back in my rented room, the moment I turned off the light and the room sank into thick darkness, I heard it, very faint, very far away. Bolero music. Not a clear melody, just familiar notes stretching out, looping over and over, like someone playing an old speaker at the end of a narrow alley. I jolted upright, my heart pounding, opened the door, and looked outside. The alley was pitch black. No one there, no house playing music. I closed the door. The music disappeared. I let out a shaky breath, forced a dry laugh, cursed myself for being paranoid. But the moment I lay back down, the music returned, this time, closer, as if it were coming from inside the room. "It's not real, it's not real," I muttered, my throat dry. I switched on the light. The room was brightly lit. No speaker, no radio, no phone playing music, and yet the melody lingered, clinging to the air itself, seeping into the damp, mold-stained walls. By morning, I was completely exhausted. I knew I had to do something. I had to go back to Bin Min supermarket, at least to talk to Mr. Kwong. I needed to know what the hell that night had really been. That afternoon, I rode my motorbike back to the old commercial complex. But Bin Min supermarket was gone. The place where the sliding glass doors used to be was now sealed with rusted corrugated metal. The sign was gone. Inside was pitch dark, thick with dust, as if it had been abandoned for years. I stood frozen, my scalp tingling. A woman selling drinks nearby had been watching me for a while. Her eyes were a mix of curiosity and wariness. Excuse me? Was there a supermarket here before? I asked cautiously. She stayed silent for a few seconds, then leaned closer, lowering her voice. The sharp smell of betel nut hit my nose. "Why are you asking about that place?" Her voice was hoarse, her eyes darkening. I worked the night shift there," I said. Her hand froze mid-air. The glass in her hand trembled slightly. "No one works night shifts there," she said, "not for a long time." My heart skipped a beat. "But I just worked there last week." She shook her head very slowly, as if looking at a madman. "That supermarket's been closed for over 3 years. Locked every night. No one dares go near it." I swallowed hard. My ears began to ring. "Then, Mr. Kwong, the manager?" She stared straight at me, her gaze icy. "What Kwong? There used to be only one security guard there. He died on a night shift." The air around us seemed to freeze. How did he die?" My voice cracked. She glanced quickly toward the dark metal-covered building, then leaned in and whispered, "They say he broke the rules." Heard a voice. Went into the sauce aisle inside. In the morning, all they found was a trail of blood dragging from there to the front door. I staggered back a step, my legs weak. "After that," she continued, her voice trembling slightly, "every night near the sea, people hear bolero music. They say it means the supermarket is recruiting again." I left without saying goodbye. My hands shook so badly while writing that I nearly fell. I understood then. I wasn't the first, and I was certain I wouldn't be the last. That night, just as I locked the door to my room, my phone vibrated. An unknown number. I stared at the screen for a long time before daring to answer. "Hello?" On the other end, there was silence for a few seconds. Then a man's raspy voice, so familiar it made my scalp go numb. "Min, your shift's starting." I looked at the clock. 11:58 p.m. Bin Min supermarket. Still need someone for the night shift. The call ended. At the same moment, In the dark room behind me, the old bolero music began to play clearly, no longer distant. And I realized something terrifying. I wasn't going back to Bin Min Supermarket. Bin Min Supermarket had never let me leave. After the call at 11:58 p.m., I didn't answer again. I collapsed onto the floor of my rented room, my back pressed against the door, cold sweat running down my spine. The bolero music was playing inside the room itself, no speaker, no electricity, as if the sound were seeping straight out of the damp, mold-stained walls. That's when I realized something important I had overlooked. In the list of rules, there was no line saying I had to return if I was called. Only one thing was repeated over and over: follow the rules until 6 a.m. I had survived because I followed them, and maybe, to truly escape, I needed to do one last thing, on my own terms. By the rules. I checked the clock, 11:59 p.m. I stood up and opened the door. The hallway was dark, yellow lights flickering overhead. The music followed me, but it no longer felt urgent, more like it was waiting. I started my motorbike and rode straight toward the sea, toward the old commercial complex. When I arrived, Bin Min Supermarket stood there as if it had never vanished. The old sign, flickering neon lights, the sliding glass doors slowly opening. Inside, the cold fluorescent lights were the same as before. But this time, I didn't go in. I stood right at the threshold, staring into the darkness beyond. "I'm not taking the shift," I said. My voice was hoarse, but firm. The sea wind picked up. The bolero slowed, warped, like a cassette tape about to run out. From the far end of the shelves, the white figure appeared, but it didn't come any closer. It just stood there, silently. "The night shift ends at 6 a.m., the voice echoed back. It was no longer vicious, just tired. I looked at my watch one last time. Exactly 6 a.m. "It's over." I turned and walked away. I didn't run. I didn't look back. When the first morning sunlight hit my face, the music finally stopped, like a long breath being released. Later that day, the commercial complex was truly demolished. Bin Min Supermarket left no trace behind. No sign, no glass doors. No one ever mentioned it again. From then on, I could sleep. I could listen to music normally. I lived as if that night had never existed. But there is one thing I always remember. Just to remind myself. If one day you're unemployed, desperate for money, and someone calls you to work the night shift at a place no one dares to go, read the rules carefully. And when it's time to leave, never stay 1 minute longer. The story ends here. Let me remind you once again, everything you have just heard is fictional. Created purely for entertainment as a horror story. If you found this story gripping and unsettling, please press like to support the channel Bong Toi Trong Dem, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chilling stories. Thank you for listening.